Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. I am joined by Melissa Miller. She's going to help me keep things on the rails, hopefully. And if I start cursing, to stop me. You guys know my tendencies, but really here to give an announcement on not just the new tooling that we have available to you in My MercuryWorks, but also really the bigger picture is we're looking to elevate our service to you guys using this tool and some other things that we're going to show you. This is our first Teams webinar, but I do believe you should see a Q&A icon towards the top of your frame. I believe you can hit those and type in questions, and at the end, we'll circle back and cover those things. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Things we're going to cover here is, first of all, an announcement of what it is we're introducing. And then, like I said, we're not looking to just show you a My MercuryWorks portal edition, but also make a higher level of service available to you. So we're going to cover that, and including some of you may be interested, some coverage on the SLAs for the different kind of service offerings. Provided we have time, we'll do a quick tour through the new module in My MercuryWorks. We've got a couple new things under development that some of you may be interested in. We'll talk about that, and then we'll hit the Q&A at the end. So effective today, MercuryWorks has released what we think is a mature service catalog and tracking system for all clients. When we say mature, we've been in business, you can see here on the slide, 25 years. And we sort of know the pain points and the hiccups in the service that we've provided. And this is an informed response to try to raise the bar. So going forward, using My MercuryWorks, you can now not just report problems. So some of you are probably used to going into Zendesk and submitting a ticket. And the only kind of ticket was essentially, I've got a problem, a bug, something needs fixed. Well, now, not only will you be able to continue to do that, you'll also be able to request new features for your apps, ask questions, be able to look at the status on each of those items that you requested, and provide ad hoc input and file uploads when need be to support it. We continue to use Zendesk, so Zendesk is behind the scenes performing the heavy lifting. But we're wrapping it in My MercuryWorks so that you can look at your financial status, your progress reports, share files, and then also manage and look in on your service requests at the same time. What's the driver? Why are we making this change? There were a few key pain points that we heard and observed with our clients. Really, the first one is the big one. It can be confusing to know how to request service. So sometimes you may go to the partner. Sometimes maybe you work with one of our directors, Jason or Kyle, and you're not sure, should I go to them? Or there's a delivery lead that you work with day to day, like Megan or Melissa, who's a lead on one of our teams. Or submit a Zendesk form, or send an email to support. And I think for a lot of you, this will hit home. We have on the side, off the side spreadsheets and OneNotes where we keep lists of UAT findings, lists of projects that we're working on. And between all of this, there's no one standard way of clients requesting service. And then the second bullet is, how do you as a client find out what's the status of a request? In the past, when you submitted a bug through Zendesk, you could go in and look at that in real time. But what if you've got just a question or a feature request? To see that move from being taken in to being acted on, discussion back and forth, that will all be possible now. And lastly, another pain point was, and I think this will ring true for a lot of you, when there's multiple players involved, there could be more than one person on your end requesting a change or a fix, There could be more than one person on our end that you're talking with. And traditionally, a lot of times this goes through email with reply alls, blasting everyone all the time. And with enough players, that can get to be a mess. So we wanted to provide a single place to go to request service, to watch it being executed, and then know where to have your points of contact. So our guiding tenets, yeah, the single point that we just talked about, also wanted to play it in context to your backlog, your progress reports, your budget reporting. We wanted to make self-service status info possible, so you're not always, waiting on a response to an email. But more than anything, we wanted to line up our operations to more smoothly deliver service, to get the requests addressed more quickly with more clarity, and to make it easy. You'll see when we originally put together this presentation, we expected to have single sign-on operating today. We've crossed that out soon. You'll have single sign-on between My MercuryWorks and Zendesk. So historically, you've had two logins for us, one in the My MercuryWorks and one in the Zendesk. Going forward, when we put this into place, if you're in My MercuryWorks and you click a ticket and you go look at the details, you'll really be looking in Zendesk. And when we have single sign-on, you won't need to provide another username and password. So what are the services that we have in what we're calling the service catalog? We've got problem ticket, which is the really continuation of the submissions that you've done in Zendesk. You can also just directly request a task. Maybe it's not a problem, and maybe it's not a new feature, but potentially you need an SSL certificate renewed, or you need a database backup performed, or any number of things. Task, you can request a feature, which is going to be a bigger request. You'll be able to describe it, provide uploads. There's no way to automate the creation of a new feature, but that will track and send off triggers to people in-house to respond to that. Two of the big ones that are I think going to make an impact are UAT findings and software releases. These are two things that have not always gone super smooth when we're finishing up a major piece of software or a new feature, and we want to make sure it's ready to go live. The UAT process, a lot of times that gives rise to the tracking spreadsheets and the OneNotes or the reply all emails. And you're often wondering, what's the status of each of the things I recorded for UAT? Can I go test them? Can I check them out? I think this is going to make that process a lot better. And similarly for software release, you may know of a release that you want us to put out that would fix some bugs or add some new features, but you want to get it scheduled. You want to find out what would be in that release and which things you would want to hold out. This one also is a new service request that you can put in. And then finally, there's a general inquiry, and that could be, any kind of question, whether it's around invoicing or whether it's around, a potential piece of work. So this is what the submit a request screen looks like. And we will get a look at this in a demo in a moment, but there is a new navigation element in My MercuryWorks called requests. And if you hit requests and click new request, this is the form that you're going to see. Also throughout My MercuryWorks, you may have noticed this if you've been in there in the last day or so. In the lower right, there's a little help bubble. And if you click that, you'll be able to pick any one of those service types that we talked about. And it'll take in the input right there. It's in a little bit of a small space. So something like reproduction steps, and getting lengthy with that, it can be a little small, but for other kinds of requests, it works really well, in my opinion. For clients that have major internal platforms, we can embed this directly into your applications so that your users, or maybe certain kinds of users, maybe your major stakeholders, you want them to be involved in the UAT process. You want them to be able to put findings in to get them addressed for UAT just directly rather than having go through a central point of contact. We are fully able to embed this inside of your applications if you would like to do that as well. When you want to get a look at the progress on a service request, when you go to that request screen in My MercuryWorks, this is what it will look like. You'll be able to track everything by ID like you're used to doing in Zendesk and see when was the last activity, what is its status, and pretty soon, this is an MVP form right now, but you'll be able to do more things. You'll be able to have them tabbed or separated out by request type because, for instance, you'll be way more interested in updates on a problem ticket usually than an inquiry. And to have those all mixed together sometimes can be, difficult to track. So that's coming as well. So we talked about SLAs, and I know that we have talked about them in the past through Zendesk, but for a lot of you, that's been a really long time. So we revisited all of our service level agreements and the targets that we're looking to hit. And we're breaking it down by service type because obviously an urgent or critical problem ticket is going to get much quicker response than a minimal importance general inquiry, for example. So with report a problem, this is sort of the top of the food chain for quick response. We've got 4 severity levels, and you can pick from these when you're submitting the ticket. And you'll see, looking at the table below, for an urgent ticket, we're looking to get a first reply to you within 15 minutes. And sort of regardless of what it is, 8 hours, I think you guys know, if your app is down, we jump on it, you hear from us within 5 minutes, and a lot of times we get it fixed within 15 minutes. This is the upper bound on how long we want things to be turned around. So for an urgent problem, the intent is for that to be at most 1 business day. And then you can see for high, normal, and low, the response times get lower than that. So one thing to keep in mind is not only are these the targets that we're looking to hit for you guys, but we have internal alerts that come out to us when it's been 15 minutes on an urgent problem that hasn't gotten a reply. We've got management reports where we can look and see how we've been doing against our SLA. That's something that we're watching a lot more closely, to be honest, than we have in the past with this new level of service. And lastly, another thing I want to mention is, aside from the tooling that we're talking about here, we've also made changes to how we handle service requests in-house. Traditionally, there were only problem tickets and they came through Zendesk. And you may well know, if you've been a client for a while, that Melissa would be the beginning point of contact for all of those tickets. And if they could be resolved just directly without engineer involvement, she went ahead and did that, and otherwise moved it on to the team to work on. Our scale has grown to the point where that's just not possible anymore. So we have what we call a delivery lead and engineering manager on all of our teams, the Scrum teams that handle your work. And we are internally routing all the requests directly to the team that works on your applications. So that's going to give you the most in-context information and people working on it that know your stuff the best. So that's something that we've done to try and increase the performance on SLAs and turnaround time, and also to give you the highest quality, like on-point intel. Not that Melissa wasn't giving highly on-point intel, but it's hard for one person to know all of your applications. So that is report a problem. New task request. I mean, there is such a thing as a new task request. You may have a big meeting coming up. You may need something carried out or changed on the application quick before you head into it. I mean, there is such a thing as an urgent task, and so we kept those severities on there for you. You can see as comparing to the problem ticket SLAs, it's not quite as quick a turnaround. Nonetheless, it still is, I would say, pretty quick, especially if something is urgent. But yeah, this is sort of one step down from reporting a problem. A lot of times your tasks are just going to sort of be normal in priority. But I do believe there will be such a thing as an urgent or a high priority task. Request the feature. Now this one is pretty variable. I mean, you can be requesting a major new module for your application. It could be a small addition to an existing feature. You know, it could be anything. So it's really hard to say, well, this is how long it'll take us to get that work done and UAT'd and released. But what we can control is how quickly you get that first reply and the next reply from the delivery lead or engineering manager on your team, because invariably this is something that needs to be talked out, probably some planning, some demo, internal demo meetings, etc. So we don't have SLAs on completion time for requesting a feature, but you can see, I mean, we're talking, same day or next day for you to get a first and second reply and get your feature addition rolling. UAT issue, if we're doing it right, we don't really, we hope that there's not a lot of urgent UAT issues because by definition, it's not in production yet. But we do know that when you're getting close to going to production, you're looking for executive sign off. There definitely can be scenarios where there's a UAT issue that you really need taken care of that day. So we have the severities back when submitting a UAT issue. And the idea here is rather than supporting sending everything as a problem, which would imply it's a problem in production, the UAT is we're going through user acceptance testing on staging, and there may be 20 or 30, it's not unusual at all for 20 or 30 things to show up during UAT. And the reason is to keep these bucketed separately from report a problem. Some additional automation we have in-house is when a problem ticket is submitted, there's Teams notifications that go off in-house. We create an Azure DevOps work item. We send an alert in Teams to the specific team to address it. When someone's going, and this has happened before, when we were testing this automation, someone's really on UAT, they can submit 20 or 30 tickets within a couple of hours. And that's just a lot of notifications that go out for something that's not in production. So that's it. Just if you're wondering, we want to put an end to the spreadsheet or OneNote tracking, and we also want to differentiate it from reporting a problem. This request a release, we touched on this a little bit up front, but you may have some bug fixes or important features that have gone through UAT and will really make a difference if they get released. And you may say, I'd really like that to happen this Friday. I'd like to have it this, and this, and I'll be the point of contact. Again, it could be a request for a release that happens a week from now, so we can't really have an SLA for when it'll be done, but we can have an SLA for what's that reply that you get when you ask for a release to cover the details and for us to get it scheduled. And finally, there's the general inquiry, which this is sort of everything else. And, this is intended to cover, budget questions, literal billing, questions. I know from time to time we have clients that aren't on ACH that want to get connected with that. We'd hate to see that submitted as a problem ticket. So general inquiry, that's what this sort of service is targeted towards. And again, usually these are going to probably get taken care of that day. If it's major though, it could take a couple days, so we don't have a defined SLA on completion of a general inquiry, but once again, we do on first reply and next reply. Last thing I'm going to hit before I jump over into the demo is there's a lot of automation that we have going on behind the scenes to try to have us up our level of responsiveness and keep the SLAs down. So at the very least, we have notifications. I just made mention of a Teams notification that goes out for a trouble ticket to get the team fired up and working on it ASAP. We have SLAs and Power BI reports that we watch from a managerial standpoint to get problematic things addressed. But we've also built some pretty significant Power Platform, like internal automations. And for UAT and software releases, that's where that's really going to come into play. So I wanted you to know that there's tooling that's going to empower us and enable us to be more responsive. With that, I'm going to go ahead and shift to a demo quickly. I won't try and belabor things, but this is the new requests page that we talked about in the My MercuryWorks portal. So some of you are probably used to coming in here, probably spending a lot of time on a dashboard, maybe taking a look at your backlog or the active board. But you've got, as of today, a new menu item here for requests. And we're in as a test user and a test organization right now, but you can see we've got 3 tickets that are open. And if I click any one of them, it's got a new look. If you don't look in the URL bar, you wouldn't know that you are at Zendesk. But for those of you who have used Zendesk before, you'll recognize this is a ticket detail page in Zendesk where we can add to the conversation. We can add files. So for those of you that have been active users of Zendesk before, all the same capabilities are there. The look is a bit new and fresher, but really this is the Zendesk behind the scenes doing the work. We made reference to internal automation, so I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here and give you an example. So here's internal notifications. Our Olympus team is the folks who work on Azure DevOps, Power Platform. And here's an example of some tickets that came in yesterday, the notification that the whole team gets, and a link through to Azure DevOps for us to perform the work. So that's just a little peek behind the curtain on what happens with some of our automation. You'll see there's links back to progress reports, the board, the dashboard within My MercuryWorks. You can also click a new request from here, and we will see we've got our drop down here that enables us to pick the kind of service that we're looking for. The input, we made reference to the inputs varying based on the kind of service that you pick. So if we go to report a problem, and you'll notice severity, if I pick minimal impact, or if I pick trivial, there's not as many inputs as if I pick critical. Now we're going to need reproduction steps. What did you expect the results to be? What were the actual results? So that we can expedite and move quickly on it. Another example would be if we pick request a release, now it's going to ask us questions for description. What is it that you want to include in that release, or why are you asking for it? For those of you with multiple applications, you can specify the app that you want to release, who are going to be the on-point people to work with within your organization, when would be some acceptable launch dates for you. So this is what the new request for service form looks like. And if I click back here, I can see this is a test that I submitted earlier today. And this is what we clicked on to get the details. Finally, this help button that I made reference to, even if you're not on the requests page, even if you're on, say, the dashboard, and you remember, I want to ask for something, you can just hit help right there, and you'll be able to submit and from any page within My MercuryWorks. So that was quick. There's also a link to the full request form in the upper right of the requests page as well. So hopefully that looks pretty simple. It's really sort of the tip of the iceberg. It's all the internal automation that happens for us that's new and is really part of this big announcement. So how much does this cost? Nothing. No cost to this. This really is an attempt for us to raise our level of service. It's about getting higher satisfaction, not increasing our revenue. And we feel like to be a true full service provider, this is the kind of thing that we need to offer to y'all. I made reference to a UAT process, and you've seen already that you can submit a UAT issue using the request page. But we think we can do better than that in improving our user acceptance testing process to be a prerequisite for a launch, frankly. To not just have 20-something separate submitted UAT items, but to have a formal, hey, we're going to do a November release of our application. We need to run it through user acceptance testing. Here's who's going to be involved. This is when it starts. This is when it ends. And then when we get UAT items submitted, it'll all be grouped together. And until those are resolved, we won't be able to start a release. And there's other improvements that we think we can make. That's something that we're in flight on right now, working on internally. We'll conduct a standalone session or discussion for anyone. If that sounds interesting to you and if it feels like it'll cure some pain for you and would like to be early adopters, I would love to talk to you. The benefit to you there really is those that are the early adopters and work with us on a pilot will have the chance to kind of influence what we build and the features that are there. Secondarily, this is something that we're much further along in time, which is raising the bar on software releases. I think we've done a pretty good job in the last year of doing more frequent releases, announcing what's going to be in those releases. I know that in the past, sometimes it was, hey, the release is done. You know what's in there. And it's like, no, we don't necessarily know exactly what was in there. So our intention is to be a lot more formal about picking the date and time, having documentation ahead of the fact of what's the contents that are going to go in those releases, to give you announcements during the release process itself. I know sometimes we forget to do that and you're curious, maybe it's a long release and you're wondering how things are going. So we have automation in place to give some updates and announcements there. And then also to have a formal verification process to make sure that we ran your released application through the paces and make sure that it's all good before we call it done. So this is something that we're actively working on now, and I think making this smooth and easy will just get us in a position where we can release smaller chunks of features more often. So same story, if this sounds interesting to you and is something you'd like to have influence over, please let me know, and we are definitely looking for some pilot folks. So when might this stuff all be ready? The the new service module, it's been released and activated for all attendees of this meeting. I believe we did that Friday. So that should be open. That's open and running for you now. Our internal service automation that we made a mention of, that's already up and running 24/7, as a matter of fact. The new UAT MVP process, we think that'll be ready in late Q4. And the software release process MVP is ready for any early adopters that are interested right now. Finally, for those of you where the single sign-on was interesting, I know it's very interesting for me because I hate tracking multiple logins. The single sign-on between My MercuryWorks and Zendesk likely will be in place next month. There we go, Steve Jobs. One more thing. This is a relatively new development, but some of you are major active users of Azure DevOps to manage your software development backlog or other backlogs. We now have a means to sync backlogs between your Azure DevOps tenant and ours. If you use Jira or something else and would still be interested in a backlog sync, we have that capability too. Traditionally, we've authored everything in our tenant and given you sort of a restricted ability to collaborate with us through My MercuryWorks. Now you can do those syncs and you can write new stories in your backlog and it'll sync to ours. You can update AC on maybe rough stories that we started and it'll sync back to us. This is definitely a power move. Not many people need this capability, but if you're watching this and you think you could take advantage of that, email me and we'll talk about it. That's everything I have in the prepared presentation. Melissa, do we have any questions that came in?
We do not.
Okay. Well, that's easy to answer then. If there aren't any questions. I will then, we'll probably be making a blog post that includes a recording of this for anyone in your organization that should see this but wasn't able to make it. That's going to be out there. We're also going to be adding a section to our website for clients where we're going to talk about how to do all this, the SLAs, the features of My MercuryWorks. That's never really been there before, so we'll be adding that soon as well. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.